Should we just continue on? It is recording, so we can continue the discussion, and hopefully it will go live soon.
Okay. So, yeah, again, thank you. And before we get into the Q&A, I think it's important that we recognize the context. And number one, how fortunate we are to be living where we're at, and with the privilege that we have. There's no shortage of people in Hawaii living under bridges and at the side of the road. But overall, we're pretty well off over here, and we're worried about our budgets, we're worried about our schools, we're worried about Medicare, Medicaid, but there are people worried about their lives. We've got brothers and sisters being swept away in the middle of the night, going to prisons and godforsaken places. So we have to take care of our home, and we have to look after, as best we can, the broader picture as well. And that's, I think, what most people want to hear is, what can we do? They want to hear a little bit about what you're doing, both of you, and a little bit about, let's say, Congress. What's Congress doing? What can they do? And then how can we help and support that? So, Congresswoman, maybe you can start off and just address that. What can we do, and what are you doing? And I want to thank you for being out there and out front. I'll tell you that right away. I know how easy it is to sit in the back of the class with your head down, hoping nothing bad happens. But you sit in the front of the class, and you wear your values on your sleeve. And I'm serious. I've worked with you in the past. I've never seen this side of you, but I'm so happy and pleased to see you out there as a member of the Progressive Caucus, standing up and speaking truth to power. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Gary. I think right now, as you know, the roles that we take on, the kind of leadership we exhibit, it's often reflective of the moment that we're in. And the moment that we're in right now requires that none of us are mere spectators sitting on the sideline. This is a full contact sport that we are talking about. It's not a game. This is real lives, just like, Salmah and you, Gary, have been talking about what's at stake. And we are very blessed to live in Hawaii, where, those in office, those who lead, those that are part of our community, we have a common set of shared values that we protect, we defend, we reflect it in our laws that we pass, the actions that we take. That is not the case for everyone in this country. In fact, for too many, as I fly back, from DC home or to DC like I did yesterday, coming from Hawaii, there is sadly a patchwork of rights denied, and more rights denied than not, across this country that we live in. And so it requires us to stand up and fight and defend, lean in, and not give up. And let's not kid ourselves. They want us to wear ourselves out. Salmah, I think you were mentioning, if I caught that briefly, about how we have to give space and time for ourselves as well, because it's absolutely a marathon that feels like a constant sprint in terms of what they're doing. But it requires us to lean in and be focused and steady, in terms of not accepting these executive orders, not accepting these rights denied, not accepting the unconstitutionality, the breaking of the rule of law as inevitable.
So
this is something.
What does that not accepting look like? I know partly it looks like going to court, and the ACLU nods their heads, that's for sure. But as individuals, and as a Congresswoman, what do we do? What tangible things can we do, do you think?
And it's tough. I'll give you that, right? The courts have been some of our most effective weapons that, that we have had, the best successes that we have seen so far. And I was talking with a few colleagues just about an hour or so ago, and we were asking ourselves that very question, what does breaking through look like? And the reality is there's no one single answer, and there's no one single person that's going to lead the wagon, charging ahead for victory. I often get questions in town halls, well, who's going to lead the party? Who's going to be the presidential candidate? The bottom line, it's going to take absolutely every one of us doing our part. It's a protest. It's letters to the editor. It's calling not just Democrats, Call Republicans. It's getting your friends who live in red states to demand things of their members of Congress. It takes us holding everyone accountable, and each and every one of us is going to have a role to play in how we resist and we fight back. And what that means to each of us will be different. For some, 20 phone calls a day, that's what they feel is the most effective things they can do. For some, it's emails. For some, it's going on the news. For some, it's doing a podcast, creating their own podcast, creating their own YouTube streaming channel to talk about why we must not let up in terms of our resistance to what we are seeing from this administration. For some, it's going to be to mobilize in key districts across this country to make sure we win back the majority in 2026 and again in 2028, then taking over the White House. I think what we have to really focus on is that it's going to take every single one of us leaning in, being uncomfortable, and doing everything we possibly can in this moment to be able to fight back. And so, no one answer, but to say that there's no wrong way to fight. Of course, we will be civil, we will be legal. We would never encourage anything but this is a moment where it's up to all of us. No one leader is going to save us.
And I realize as I ask the question, there's no silver bullet. And even though you're surrounded by people immersed in this issue, there are no easy answers, or else we would have got them. But what I hear just now, what you said resonates with me, is call my friends and relatives in red states. You know, because I have family in Alabama. You know, and
yes.
And yeah, engage people and show up. Salmah, what you want to jump in here? What? How can we resist? How are you resisting? How does ACLU
thank you
see
so
it?
much.
Both in Hawaii. Both in Hawaii as well as nationally. I want to make sure we talk about some local stuff here. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Representative. It's beautiful sharing space with you, and I just want to echo that may have gotten lost on the a live stream. But one, take care of yourselves. We need to be. There are no political solutions to spiritual problems. And unfortunately, our residents in Hawaii are under a great amount of stress. The prices of grocery, our wages not meeting, our living standards. It's hard out here, and we have to keep reminding one another, to take time to rest, reminding one another that it's going to be okay. And it's only when we are sort of in that supported framework, when we're in community, that we can really start to be fearless. In the words of Mohsen Madawi, the student who was arrested by ICE for his pro-Palestinian speech, when he got released, the first word, what he said at the press release is, President Trump, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of your cabinet. I mean, that takes a lot of determination to know that you could be deported. You're living your American dream. You were just in jail, and you come out of this situation, your case is not over, and you're still saying you're unafraid. That's the kind of energy we have to tap into. That's the kind of energy that we need to share among one another. So one, I would say to the community, energize yourself and get yourself in a space where you are feeling fearless for the movements to come. Number two, empower yourself by knowing your rights. You can go to our ACLU of Hawaii website and you can see a whole slew of Know Your Rights workshops that we've done over the last 2 years preparing for this moment. Once you know your rights, you will know how to engage with the government in a way that feels safe, and you'll be able to help your neighbors. So when ICE shows up to your place of work or to your church or to your school, you'll be able to push back in a way that confirms to knowing your rights, but also is respectful of authority. We teach you how to do this in our Know Your Rights workshop. So please go online, get yourself, situated with if there's a particular issue that's coming down related to the administration's work that impacts you. There's likely a Know Your Rights training on it. If not at the ACLU of Hawaii, ACLU National has it. So please watch that. Number three, I would say organize. Organize yourself, organize your communities. I know that the Hawaii Coalition for Civil Rights is just restarted. and they're organizing all civil rights institutions and legal aid societies to kind of come together so that we can build off of the work that we're doing. So we got to organize. It can't be all of us working in silos. You know, organizations that may have in the past argued on a piece of legislation because a word here was not in line with their agenda or their vision. We've got to sort of not allow for perfection to be the enemy of progress in this moment. We've got to build the plane as we're flying it, because there's so much work to do and there's so much coming at us. So we've got to be efficient and we've got to organize. And lastly, of course, I would encourage everybody, if you're not yet, to become a member of the ACLU. You just go to aclu.org. You become a member, and then you'll see we send out action alerts to make the community sort of feel empowered and know that they can get involved when it comes to calling your representatives, when it comes to pushing out a piece of communication, when it comes to showing up and packing the court for a critical hearing that we might be having. So all of those things, again, just to recap, sort of be fearless, know your rights, organize, become an ACLU member.
Thank you so much.
Representative Tokuda, you did mention previously about the courts being one of our only protections that have kind of stepped up. But some people are feeling a lot of anxiety because President Trump is defying the court orders. So what can you tell us to give us some faith that our democratic institutions are not just going to fall to the wayside?
You know, it's not our only hope, but it's been our most effective weapon, right? And I do think this is where, again, we have to hold every single Republican accountable. And I say it's not just about President Trump, even though he is the one defying the court orders, but it really is about all those that are enabling him. Every single member of the GOP Congress is standing idly by why he absolutely just ignores the Constitution, ignores the orders of the courts, intimidates, bullies judges, and has this really horrible pay-to-play, henchman in Elon Musk that will literally give money to Republicans if they say that they must impeach judges that are not in line with the president's agenda. This is the most egregious acts of pay to play that we have ever seen. The American people have to understand that at the core of this is corruption. This is corruption. It must be literally the anchor that weighs every single one of them down when it comes to even them considering re-election in 2026. If there is something Republicans fear, it's not getting reelected. As horrible as it sounds, Gary and I both know this is not a job. This is not a career. This is a calling and a passion. And every single day, the votes that you take may or may not ensure that you will be reelected again, but you do it because of the values you believe in, the people that you serve. Right now, we have Republicans serving a single person, a single entity in President Trump. And that's absolutely not right. And he has to be held accountable to it. We have to do everything we can to support our law firms that are also being threatened. We cannot have any yield to this kind of bullying and intimidation, extortion tactics that we are seeing. This is a third branch of government that oftentimes people don't even think about. That's why we're in this point here. This is why we're in this moment in history right now. We have to understand that the branch of government ultimately that should and will stand the test of time and transcend politics should be the judiciary. And right now, we need to do everything we possibly can to support the courts, to support the judges, to support the firms, so that we can continue to hold them accountable and take actions. Is it distressing? Is it disgusting? Is it frustrating when he ignores the orders of the court, when he disregards the Constitution? It is, but that doesn't mean we give up. And so this, again, as I've said, is the moment that we lean in. And I will say this too, we think nationally that this is something we have to do. There's a lot of local people. There's a lot of our friends and neighbors and family, that need to be reminded how the egregious actions of the Trump administration will come home and hurt people we love. We're so close in Hawaii. I tell everyone I meet, you may not feel impacted now, but every single one of us is 1 degree of separation from the hurt and the harm that this administration will cause. Whether it's you will find somebody deported from this country, whether it's someone who will no longer have food on their table because their SNAP benefits have been taken away, whether it's someone who loses life-saving, quality of life health care because Medicaid gets cut. All of these different things, it's 1 degree of separation away in Hawaii from you feeling the pain and the hurt that this administration is putting on all of our people. And we have to make sure that we remind them of the personal consequences and impacts of all of these actions. So share the stories, make the faces real to people, because I can tell you, having gone out into communities across our state, there are still many of those who believe that this is just about waste, fraud, and abuse. And as I tell everyone, waste and fraud and abuse, yeah, that's not what they're doing. That's not what they're doing here. They're hurting real people. So
Thank you. Just to add in on this, I agree with you. The Republicans have to, stand up because they're the party that's making this bad stuff happen. But I also believe we need to keep pressure on the Democrats as well. You've, like I said earlier, have stood up strong. There's other Democrats not standing up as strong. There's local Democrats in Hawaii that aren't even speaking out at all. And so I believe that people in the community should hold all of our elected people accountable and communicate with them their needs and wants. So thank you. Thank you so much. You said it well.
thank you. I will add, Gary, just because you and I have back and forths all the time. I agree. But having just come out, for example, of a reconciliation hearing for the Armed Services Committee, where Democrats all voted no on different amendments and Republicans voted yes. And yeah, we had a few Democrats defect, but it wouldn't have mattered at the end, even in terms of the amount. What we really need to make a difference is we have got to get brave Republicans, if there are any out there. We have to get some with a conscience. We have to at least get them afraid enough of their reelection or something, to be able to vote on the other side. This is a math problem we have. Yes, it's a courage problem too, on both sides of the aisle. I agree with you. But until that math changes, sadly, they will continue to pass these horrible, horrible bills, horrible budgets that we are seeing right now. So if it's about how much time we have to be able to put pressure, I'm not saying don't call the Democrats, but where we really need to start to see the domino effect happening is on the Republican side. We must amplify, we must move more there, because that's where we'll have any hope of trying to stop some of these things from happening.
Well said. Thank you so much. Aria, were you gonna?
I was going to ask if Salmah or Congresswoman have just an idea to give statistically what exactly are the effects that are happening in Hawaii. Do you guys know how many immigrants are here that could be facing deportation and scared, or how many federal workers have already been affected by the job losses?
Thanks, Aria. I don't have statistics on those. I could try to get them and give them back to you and Gary at a later time. But I did have some kind of technical points to share about the court and define the court orders. If I can go back to that question, if that's okay.
I'd love to hear that, because people want to know what happens next if they defy the courts too. Continue to defy the courts. Go ahead, Salmah.
Yeah. So I think we have not, the American Civil Liberties Union has not yet declared that we're in a constitutional crisis, but we're getting there, and we might get there when what we say, openly defies a court order. So what's happening is that the administration is not listening to certain judges, is retaliating against certain judges, but they keep saying that they have a reason to do so. And they keep using these kind of technical phrases in the law or in the timing of proceedings to say that they were not intentionally trying to defy the courts. What's also really interesting is sometimes procedurally, the Supreme Court will come out with a certain temporary ruling or temporary order and then send it back. And then you'll see a lot of traffic in the media about the Supreme Court has ruled this way, but actually, the Supreme Court has only said that we can't decide this issue, we're sending it back down. So to give this a little bit of context, President Trump is trying to use the Alien Enemies Act to overcome certain procedural safeguards. And in April, the question before the Supreme Court is whether or not he could deport he could deport legal permanent residents under this Enemy Aliens Act. And to give you the context, the Alien Enemies Act, is a centuries old authority that's never been used during peacetime, but it allows for the transfer of hundreds of people to foreign prisons. The act allows for the president to apprehend, then restrain, and then remove these non-citizens. The last time this wartime authority was invoked was during World War II, leading to the internment of non-citizens and primarily those of Japanese descent, eventually the internment program targeting Japanese Americans. And we all know this too well. This shameful moment impacted families all across Hawaii and the continent. It wasn't until 2018 that the Supreme Court recognized that Korematsu had been overruled and was bad law. And so we're seeing history repeat itself, and we're seeing him try to bring back the Alien Enemies Act. And what's interesting is that, of course, at this time, the act applies to invasion or predatory incursion. But of course, there's no military invasion. There's no incursion occurring in the United States. But what the administration is trying to do is that they're asserting that certain gang members are, part of, for example, a certain TDA in Venezuela. They're saying that that gang is actually considered a foreign nation or a government itself. So members of that gang that are in the United States are therefore deportable under the Alien Enemies Act. He's trying to find these loopholes, and he's trying to resurrect, sort of dormant law in order to push a very aggressive immigrant removal agenda in this moment. And I don't have the exact statistics, Aria, but this is impacting thousands of families across the country, especially if he continues to use this. So what happened is the Supreme Court last month said that we don't have judicial review over this question of whether or not he could use it. It has to be decided in a habeas corpus proceeding. Then there was a habeas corpus proceeding in the Southern District for the U.S. District Court in Texas. Then that district court in Texas judge said it's unlawful for the president to use the Alien Enemies Act in this way, and therefore this person cannot be detained because the way in which this person was detained is unlawful. That we're not in wartime. We are relatively in peacetime. And so the Supreme Court then temporarily blocked the Trump administration from deporting any Venezuelan men held in the Blue Bonnet Detention Center in northern Texas under the Alien Enemies Act. And so the ACLU National has been holding some of this work, and they successfully filed the emergency appeal over the concerns that were posed by this and have been in multi-pronged litigation across the country. That's just one example of one piece of litigation that's happening, and the checks and balances are working. Whether they're going to work for the long term, whether they're working effectively, whether they're working efficiently, that's another question. But right now, the checks and balances are working, and the courts, even Trump appointed judges, are saying what he's doing is unlawful. And so I do think that's a place for the public to hold on to hope and to continue to try to give to institutions that are doing this impact litigation work or trying to help fortify the law and fortify due process in this way.
Thank you so much. I'm so thankful we have lawyers willing to stand up and fight. I was watching something, I don't know if it was in 60 Minutes, what it was, talking about those law firms who have got caved in basically, and paying Trump off with millions and millions of dollars of free legal services just so he doesn't come after them rather than fight. So thank you, Salmah and the ACLU. Congresswoman, I got a lot of questions from people once they found out you were coming on. Were asking me ask her about Gaza, ask her about the Palestinians, ask her about what's going on over there, and it involves Trump, but it also began way before Trump came in. It's a tragedy. I think everyone will agree with that. I understand you're one congresswoman out of 400 and some people. But if you could speak to your thoughts on the Palestinian tragedy in Gaza unfolding as we speak, where you see it going, and what we can do, and what you can do as a congresswoman on that. If you don't mind spending a few moments on that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, everything we can do, right? We have been here from last year voting against funding for Israel, which not everyone did, but taking that stand as a result of just the indiscriminate mass killing that we are seeing right now, the inhumanity of it there, signing on to letters, bills and other things to hold even our government accountable for the transfer and sale of weapons without any type of congressional approval as well. That has been something that we have been fighting to do. Most recently, the big concern, fear, things that we are pushing back and fighting against in terms of letters is making sure that everyday students, everyday individuals have the ability to peacefully protest against this. The victims that we are seeing right now, the casualties, they're in the States. There are basic freedoms and rights to be able to express ourselves. Um, that I think is something that we have been focused on, is protecting that free speech, making sure, and they're doing quite the job of it in terms of the Republicans. This is the one place I have seen, sadly, Republicans lockstep with each other, not fighting, not defiant, is somehow trying to paint every single protester who has opposed the indiscriminate killing, of Palestinians, the genocide, quite frankly, as somehow being unlawful, as somehow being anti-Semitic as well. And we know that there is, in fact, anti-Semitism in this world, and we do not stand for that. It does not mean that because someone opposes what Israel is doing right now in Gaza, that ultimately and immediately makes everything that they are saying anti-Semitic. So, right now, that is the greatest threat to me, is our freedom of speech. The president has continued, as did the previous administration, to sell weapons to Israel. We can write letters, right? We can attempt calls. We can do everything that we can. We can introduce bills. We can vote against budgets. But right now, the most effective thing I think that every one of us are doing on this Zoom is standing up for the rights of those who are peacefully protesting. In many cases, to make sure that this is not something forgotten amidst all this chaos that we're dealing with.
Thank you so much.
Speaking about the protests that have been going on, should everyday citizens be fearful that they will, end up on the wrong side of someone's vengeance against them if they're traveling, coming back into the country? Are people looking at I've heard rumors of people looking at your cell phone records, and saying, do you support this administration or not? Are you a protester or not? People have been turning their data off when they go to these rallies. Is it worth it for us to continue out speaking up like this, or do we need to be more cautious?
I think it's such a sad moment in time in history, isn't it? When we have so many options to be able to share our views, our perspectives, to communicate with each other. And now we're finding ourselves feeling like we're living in such a different state. This is not a democracy where you're worried about what might be on your phone, what might be on your social media feed. I went and talked to some students that were studying abroad from the States. And they told me that they were scared to come home. These are American citizens, college kids, who, because of the political and academic kinds of oppressions that they are seeing on their campuses back home, they weren't sure if they wanted to go home, and that really breaks your heart. in terms of what we are seeing and the kind of message we are sending our own people right now. I'm never one to say scrub your phone, live in fear and whatnot. But I also can't tell people that I don't, what may or may not happen when they travel abroad and when they try and come back home. In our office, we just say this: if you need help, especially if you find yourself in a situation, call your Codel. If you need help coming back into the country, if you find that you have been questioned, if you find that your phone has been seized and searched in ways that are inappropriate, right? I mean, we all know that the typical TSA procedures in terms of swabbing, in terms of, extra x-ray checking or pat downs or whatnot. But we are hearing a lot of people sadly getting questioned more than ever, depending on their status or whatnot. And so if you have concerns, reach out to your members of Congress so that we can do everything we can to support you. But at this time, it's, I can't say with this administration, no, that will never happen. If we were here 6 months ago, a year ago, we could speak with some confidence that you would be fine to protest peacefully, civilly, legally, right? That you could go ahead and do that on issues that you care about that are important to you. We are sadly in a time when this administration, the president talking about reopening Alcatraz, has openly said he would look at sending U.S. citizens to El Salvador, another country, a gulag in another country, right? These are different times. These are different times. And so we just want to make sure everyone is safe. And we want to make sure, though, that we still stand up and defend and protect everyone's right to be able to share their opinions, to speak their mind, and to protest legally, civilly, and peacefully as well. I do believe that is what our forefathers were envisioning when they created this country.
Thank you. Excellent question. Excellent question, Aria. I worry about it myself. There's no question about it. Claudette and I are planning some trips, and I'm thinking, do I leave my phone home? Do I get a burner phone? What do I do? But now I've got Congresswoman Tokuda's phone number. I'm gonna keep her on speed dial.
And there's also an ACLU. If you go to ACLU's national website, there's a beautiful blog post done by our speech, privacy, and technology lawyers that outlines the steps that you all should take when you're traveling overseas and when you come back home, about your laptop, about your cell phone. Please, I've sent it to all of my staff. I've sent it to all my board directors when they're traveling overseas to follow this guidance, because you may be detained. This is coming from someone who gets routinely detained when I come back from overseas. I have a 5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, a newborn. Last time I got detained, even with my newborn child, there's no mercy. There's questioning for hours. They've taken my phone. They forced me to unlock it. If I don't unlock it, they have, under the border search exception, the legal ability and authority at the border to take my phone. So this is, we kind of have the border, and coming back into the United States is risky for activists and advocates, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop being the executive director of the ACLU. That means, like, this is the time more than ever that we need to be using our voices. This is the time that we have to be pushing back, because yes, it might be an inconvenience. And I mean, it's definitely not pleasant. And again, going back to how we need to replenish ourselves because the government is always engaging in ways to traumatize us. We have to learn to take those experiences and move forward and continue to be strong. So I would encourage everybody to equip themselves and just remind folks that the First Amendment to our United States Constitution provides that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or the rights of the people to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And the Supreme Court of the United States has said speech that is critical of the exercise of the state's power lies at the very heart of the First Amendment. The First Amendment exists so that we can resist. The First Amendment exists so that we can tell the government what we want to say, to be critical of it, particularly at this time. The First Amendment is there to protect you. And especially, I think there's a lot of confusion about immigrants. Do immigrants have First Amendment rights? All these immigrants and legal permanent residents, people who assume that they had rights, are being detained right now, but those detentions are unlawful. Of course, people who are residing in the United States do have First Amendment and free speech rights. The Supreme Court held in an old case called Bridges versus Wixon that freedom of speech and press is accorded to aliens residing in this country. That means that the federal government does not have the authority to deport individuals or revoke their residency based off of viewpoint alone. So please, I encourage you, continue to speak truth to power, continue to be posting about Palestine, continue to be talking in your circles about the detriment of these federal cuts. Don't be scared is what I want to say. It might happen, but you'll get over it and you'll get legal help, and we'll continue to fight for you.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in real quick and just remind the people watching they can pose questions, and we're going to look at those questions as we speak in the chat. I want to thank Sergio Alcabilia for posting a number I didn't know. He said that between 41,000 and 51,000 undocumented immigrants in Hawaii, about half of them from the Philippines. That's pretty big numbers, and we should all be on the lookout as ways to help our Filipino brothers and sisters.
And I think that was in regards to the question, right? That's our best guess estimate too. A lot of the data that we have out there, even the data savvy about this administration and what they've done, how many people they've deported, how many people they've fired, whether it's in Hawaii or across the country. It's really fuzzy math. There's no real good accounting that we have seen, but we have heard the number floated around that he intends to deport 1 million people. Right, not obviously from Hawaii, but 1 million people. He doesn't care how he gets them. He'll offer people $1,000 to go back on his own, and they'll probably count those. He has deported Kufa migrants, which we know living in Hawaii should never have happened. He'll deport kids with cancer, United States citizens, by the way. He'll deport them too. It's all about the numbers. It's about this arbitrary, harmful, disgusting kind of target that he's established in terms of how many people he wants to deport. 1 million people in a year is probably at least 3 times as many as we've ever seen deported in any single year in recent history. He's wanted to fire, anywhere from 10 to 20% of the federal workforce. And so that number, about 200,000, was floated around at one particular point. But as we know, it's hard to put a pin on it in terms of how many people have actually been fired, given the fact that the courts have said you can't fire these probationary employees, without any cause. And they've gone back and retracted some of the firings. You had the deferred resignation, which resulted in, about 75,000 employees across the country taking him up on those offers. We've asked for that information broken down by state, by congressional district, by agency, how many people took even the deferred resignation, and we have never gotten those figures and that data. But if you just look at these, it's about targets for them. It's not about the human lives and the impact. It's not about the services they provide. It's not about the contributions people make. Our migrant ohana, as well as our federal employees, all contributing in many cases to the health and well-being of our communities. Just indiscriminate targets. 1 million people deported, 200,000 federal workers fired. And definitely, as we know, local impacts here in Hawaii.
Oh man, I'll tell you, I was stressed out all day long thinking about this conversation. I think many of us are. We see the news, and there's just keep thinking, well, I'm overreacting, and then I realize, no, we're not overreacting, not one little bit. I'm probably underreacting. Aria, do you have any...
when I was all my life growing up, my father was a green card holder. He only became a U.S. citizen in 2008, and I can't imagine what other children are feeling like for, you know, people that they have parents that might have, you know, a green card or, you know, undocumented, and it's so scary to think about like these children living in fear, young adults living in fear. What is the best way that we can be allies to our neighbors and friends who might not who might have, you know, the unlegal status, or how can we support them?
So if we did a recent Know Your Rights on interacting with ICE, where we covered if ICE shows up at the school, if ICE shows up at the hospital, if ICE shows up at your workplace, if ICE shows up on the street, if ICE shows up at your car on a road stop, all the different ways in which ICE shows up and how to react. What's really interesting is it's really neighbors that we're seeing come together to protect, particularly our non-English speaking immigrants who need support and help in that moment, that are coming and equipping themselves with this knowledge and how to know your rights and protect one another, and just protecting their immigrant neighbors. And so, you know, one thing is if you see a stop happening or you see an arrest of an immigrant happening, you can totally record that on your phone. You can, as long as you're not obstructing justice, you can record it on the phone. You should tell your immigrant neighbors. You can ask to see, can I see that warrant? Is that a warrant for arrest? And the warrant has to be signed by an actual judge, not just an immigration officer. So they've been tricky, ICE, and how they're saying like, here's your a search warrant, but it's not actually a judicial warrant. And so the training goes through that. And so really, I would encourage people to, you know, get that training and empower and equip yourself with that. Also, speaking locally of what's happening here in Hawaii, as we know, the administration is aiming to hurt our most vulnerable, including those who identify as transgender. And Maui Prep has a policy that is currently discriminating against transgender students. And so we sent Maui Prep a letter just showing, even if federal law, there's still questions about gender affirming care, and that's being played out. What's going to be really important in the days to come is how we can use Hawaii state law to make sure we're creating a veil, and make sure that we're creating sort of a civil rights veil and using our state constitution and state law to get those protections that might be being taken away by the federal government. So for example, Hawaii Revised Statute 368D1 prohibits discrimination based on gender identity at schools that receive state funding. And so, you know, that is our nexus to say, hey, I know you think that, you know, it's okay to discriminate against transgender students now. And I know you want to be you know, some entities are trying to be mini doges, and just really acting and doing the work on behalf of the government, feeling empowered by a conservative agenda. What we're saying is no, despite what's happening federally, there's a lot that we can do locally. And the ACLU of Hawaii is looking at how we can come to next legislative season in 2026 and create more of those statewide veils.
I think we're moving into the hour, but I want to ask like a follow-up that it may be kind of a touchy question, but I'll ask it anyway. You know, you hear talk about sanctuary cities or sanctuary places, states maybe. And for the record, I don't think anybody wants to protect hardened killer criminals. I mean, they're entitled to due process as well. But this is way beyond that. This is sweeping innocent people off the streets. And so to ensure that people are entitled to the due process, that they get the due process they're entitled to, what does our state and county law enforcement agencies, are they compelled to cooperate with ICE, or can they provide some assurances that due process will be followed? I don't know. It's kind of a hard question, but if anybody wants to tackle it.
Salmah, you probably know better, but I don't believe any of our law enforcement entities in Hawaii have signed any kind of MOU with ICE so far. So that is a good thing. They have, I have heard that some of them have been on site to protect peace and other things to keep people safe, supposedly. when they have gone to pick up individuals. That is what I've heard. I haven't been there myself, but not actively engaging in any kind of removal or any kind of deputization. You know, so that's my understanding is, the federal government can't force, intimidate, shouldn't, right? Compel local law enforcement to, be party to any actions of ICE. And it would have to be some kind of MOU that would, I believe, have to actually be agreed to by the city council or the county councils um, in order for them to engage in that. I believe Hawaii Island actually took one up and it did not, right? They decided not to do any kind of further action on the MOU. And so it would have the opportunity to have that public input process and that testimony as well, to make sure that, this is not something they can do unilaterally or on their own. That's my understanding in terms of the county and state process.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Yeah, that's exactly correct. And that understanding is derived from the 10th Amendment of the US Constitution, which states that the powers not delegated to the United States by the constitutions, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectfully or to the people. And so the 10th Amendment fundamentally limits the federal government's power and reinforces this principle of federalism. It says that the federal government cannot compel state governments and state municipalities to do its dirty work for them. Many other counties and states across the country have these 287G agreements, which, as the Congresswoman was saying, are sort of memorandums of understanding that, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. Local law enforcement will help each other out. But we have been very clear, our advocate community, that local law enforcement in this moment should not be helping out the federal government when it comes to what's happening, because they too can be held liable if they are found helping for the due process violations that flow to them. And so, we're hoping that Hawaii and all of our counties continue to push back, that they don't honor what's called ICE detainers. Sometimes somebody might be picked up and then ICE will tell the local law enforcement agency, okay, detain them for 48 hours or 72 hours so we can get in there and get them. There's no honoring right now that we know of that are happening, of ICE detainers in the state. So again, we're so lucky to be in Hawaii and to be in a community where, we know one another, and that immigrants have family members that might be in the police force. And, we want to, I think, continue to, as much as we can, hone into those community values that are so deeply entrenched here in the state of Hawaii. It's why I decided to be a settler here, to move here, to try to, be part of this beautiful community. I feel like many of us feel a kuleana to mutual respect and protecting one another. And so I'm so happy to be in community with all of you, and especially you, Congresswoman. Thank you for speaking truth to power. And again, like Gary said, just, being at the front of the table and not backing down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will say this, knowing your rights is important. Salmah, for what you folks are doing on the website, that's really critical that people go click on engage, teach themselves, teach their neighbors and friends, because a lot of what we're hearing out there, people are just scared, right? One of the main weapons and tools this administration uses is fear, intimidation, so that you suspect everything. All of a sudden, someone in a uniform, they must be ICE. It could be a deal in our, good daycare officer going to get a cheeseburger at the restaurant across the street. But all of a sudden, people see that uniform, people see a marked vehicle, and they're immediately scared. That's how this administration works. It's through fear, it's through intimidation. The best way that we can push back against this is by standing as a united front, protecting each other, knowing our rights, and educating ourselves and the people around us. And so thank you for doing that, because that's also one of the best weapons that we have right now against what is just a cult of fear that they are just spreading out there, so that every community feels like they're at risk.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. I just, before we let you go, I have one question. It's kind of a little bit of a shift, but I really want to take the opportunity. I wanted to thank you for speaking out against, or not against, but acknowledging the military's role, that it's had the effect on the housing issues that Hawaii has. That was so amazing to hear someone actually acknowledge it in a very respectful way. I know things are business as usual right now, but has there been any movement towards that after you made that statement? Or what can the federal government actually do in that case to maybe help improve the situation?
First of all, they can acknowledge that the report was not great. It was a substandard report to me, because what I really wanted from that report that I put in the NDAA was actual suggestions of solutions, right? We know the impact, the significant impact that our military service members are having on our very limited housing stock in Hawaii. And everyone needs a home, I understand that, but let's build more. Let's find a way so that we can free up housing, we can build more housing accessible for our Kama'aina families as well. There's a lot of different strategies and approaches that I think we should be doing. And so as we head into the next round of NDAA negotiations, literally in the next month, housing is one of those things that I really will be pushing. And I would say that as we start to look at the land lease renegotiations as well, which is a big hot topic heading towards 2029, a whole of government approach, including how we look at our Department of Defense contributing to increase housing affordability and opportunity and infrastructure for our people in all of our islands, should be not just on the table, it should be a serious consideration. Because everyone I talk to in the military, I will tell them that one of the most impactful things you can do for our local people is help us with housing. And let's not call it affordable housing people can afford in the moment that they're in, whether it's rentals, whether it's workforce housing near where people are able to access jobs, whether it's senior housing, across the spectrum, contributes to the problem. Don't take away precious inventory. And so we're continuing to push on that. And that's something that I'll go into the NDAA season with it for, additional follow-up amendments and actions.
Great. Actually, later on the show, we were going to do an announcement of the need to provide testimony for the Pohakaloa hearing that's before the Board of Land and Natural Resources.
Friday.
And I believe the clear majority of, I'll just speak for people that, my friends, are staunchly opposed to that. But we don't have time to really drill into that subject today. But the military's footprint in Hawaii, especially under Hegseth or whatever, is it gets more scary. I mean, we've all watched that guy and the people he does business with, and to have them be in charge of the military is frightening. But again, we're kind of a little bit off topic. I think, Aria, is this the time when we offer them a few minutes for closing remarks?
Yes.
And then we're going to get into some general announcements and stuff like that. Is that, or Aria, I'm counting on you to hold me on track.
So thank you guys so much for your time. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a closing statement. You can go first, Congresswoman Tokuda.
No, just thank you, first of all, for doing this podcast and live stream. This is a time, as we've said all along throughout the show, that we've got to lean in to, democracy. We have got to make sure that we don't hold back as much as it may be scary at times. We've really got to lean in and we've got to support each other. It demands it. It demands that none of us are spectators in what is a full contact sport. And we have to make sure that we are sticking together to really uphold democracy. So just a big mahalo for allowing me to be a part of this podcast. And I know for a lot of the folks listening in, I am sure I will see you at a rally, a protest, a town hall meeting, something in the very near future. But thank you, everyone, for all that you are doing to support, give us strength here in Washington, D.C. to continue to do our job and fight for the Constitution, fight for the rule of law, fight for every American, and making sure that we uphold human rights throughout our country for all individuals. So thank you. And Salmah, thank you for all of the hard work that you are doing and the advocacy and actions of the ACLU. You guys are real fighters, and proud to stand by you folks and all that you're doing.
Salmah, closing words.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. What a joy this evening has been. Thank you so much. You know, it's only been the first 100 days of the Trump administration, and already ACLU National has filed 110 legal actions, including 53 lawsuits. We've successfully blocked the EOs on ending birthright citizenship, restricting access to gender-affirming health care for people under 19, and cutting schools' federal funding if they've engaged in DEI initiatives. We've successfully done that, but there's so much more to do. We also have EOs out that are that are against the fast tracking of deportations without due process, shutting down asylum at the border, canceling hundreds of scientific research projects, restricting voting rights, dismantling the DOE, and so much more. There's so much more that we have to keep doing and have to keep fighting for. So I really want to encourage folks that we are just so blessed to be living on these islands of Hawaii that have been stewarded for generations by Native Hawaiians, and it's just really we live amongst a community, I think, that is really might be the center of some really strong resistance moving forward, particularly given the makeup of our federal delegation and people like Congresswoman Tokuda, for your strong fearlessness. So please, you know, just stay in tune, even if things aren't affecting you right now. Like, just try to stay engaged. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Just go ahead and get that knowledge any way that you can, because, you know, we're going to need you to join our fights, every one of us. Like the Congresswoman said, no, there's no luxury for standing on the sidelines. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Wow, that was good. They're both on the front lines.
Yeah.
And it's good to have people that are actually doing the work, talking to people every day, nationally as well as locally. So
we'll definitely have to invite Congresswoman Tokuda back, because there's so much more that we could ask her and people wanted to know. So hopefully she'll be able to come back in the future.
You know, I've seen her grow, and we all grow, right? I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago or 20 years ago either, but I've seen her step up, and step up and speak out. And again, you know, you and I both, we see a lot of politicians come and go, and too many of them sit in the back of the class with their head down, don't want to make waves. And she moved to the front of the class, and is speaking out strongly. And I believe she said she voted against the funding for increasing military arms to Israel.
Yep.
And no, she's really growing and stepping into her position well, I think. And Salmah and the ACLU, thank goodness for those folks, I'll tell you. I know a lot of people, Aria, are probably wondering about when the next action is. I get emails and calls and texts all the time. And I try to remind people, Gary's not in charge, okay? So I would encourage people to go to Indivisible. That's probably the first stop. Indivisible, the website. I think there's separate websites, Indivisible Kauai, Indivisible Hawaii, and they probably are posting it. You know, social media is running it, and just got to tune in to find out when the next one is. I couldn't tell you right now.
We had a comment. I'm sharing it right now. June 14th, No Kings rally. I don't know if that's just on Oahu or if there's other islands are participating.
Okay. And, you know, I found it's a great opportunity to meet people too, to see old friends and make new ones. And it's healthy to build relationships and to build community. So, yeah.
I wanted to share, I've seen some criticism online that they haven't seen any elected officials at these rallies. And I'm so privileged because I know so many of them are my friends. I can spot them in the crowd. You know, I was lucky enough to see Amy Peruso. She's all of 5 feet tall, so she definitely is going to blend in with all the other, you know, labor guys. So I just want to say that, you know, for people that are feeling discouraged, that they think that there are elected officials don't care, they're not out there. There are a lot that are out there. They're just, you know, they might not be standing in the front, holding signs and trying to get attention. They're in the community. So
Yeah, I think as we go forward with these podcasts, part of it is advocacy 101. And so some of our viewers know who their representatives are, but on a first name basis, they can recognize them. Many don't. I would encourage everybody, know your representative, state representative and state senator and council member by name. And so you have to find out the one that's in your district. Actually do the research. Go to capital.hawaii.gov and plug your address in there. Find your legislator. There's a feature, find your legislator, and reach out to them and say, I may have missed you at the protest. Were you there? And then encourage them. But you gotta reach out to them, know them by name. Before we run out of time, too, we did talk a little bit about Pohakaloa. I think in the scope of things, that is one of the most significant, tangible actions, tangible events that is the people of Hawaii can get involved in right now. And my position is to just say no to Pohakaloa. The military has been abusing that property on the Big Island for, I think, 20 years now for $1. And to me, it's not about money. It's about conservation land. It's about Hawaii land for Hawaii people. It's about land back. And the military still has Pearl Harbor. It still has Hickam. It still has all these other bases. So this is not going to cripple the U.S. military. I support a strong defense, but it's time. This is an opportunity to say no to Trump and say no to Hegseth and say no. We don't want a military entity that hasn't proven good stewardship, period, in Hawaii. Look at Red Hill. And so the hearing is on Friday, and testimony is needed. People living on Oahu, please show up. There's a little bit about it right there on the screen. And so that's that part in person. There we go. BLNR testimony at hawaii.gov. May 8th at 9 a.m. is a deadline for written testimony. Lots of organizations are sponsoring this, and so I'm hoping for a really strong turnout on that. I forgot to do our disclaimer at the beginning that this is just us. We're not sponsored or paid by anybody. It's just Aria Juliet Castillo. That's a beautiful name, I have to say.
Thank you.
And Gary Hooser with Mishka in the background. Mishka, thank you so much for helping us hold it all together. And do we have any other? We have time for more questions. We got about.
Yeah, we have some time if people want to throw some questions in the chat. I did want to take a moment to acknowledge that the Oahu Neighborhood Board elections are happening right now. If you're a registered voter on Oahu, you should have gotten a letter in the mail that has your instructions. They do online voting. It's really easy. I would encourage everyone that is on Oahu to start participating in your neighborhood boards. I did an exercise this last year with HAPA for a good governance campaign. And I attended a lot of the neighborhood board meetings virtually. And it's really great to see so many concerned citizens participating. But it's also a little discouraging because a lot of these boards are lacking quorum because the board members don't bother to show up. So they can't actually vote on anything. They haven't passed their minutes in a couple months. They can't pass any resolutions. So if you're frustrated with your local government, that might be a great place to start. A lot of the neighborhood boards, they do have elections. There are some contested seats, but there's going to be a lot of vacancies. And those seats are going to have to get appointed one way or the other.
That's excellent pivot to, we got to think local, folks. Okay, Washington D.C. is a long ways away. We don't have a whole lot of impact there as individual voices. We got to keep raising those voices, but we do have impact on neighborhood board elections, on local county council elections, on state rep and state senate elections, and that's where the power lies. We need to be more involved in those elections. Our state government we need our state government to step up to fill the gap that is left as our budgets are slashed by the federal government. We need our state and local governments to step up and to protect due process. We need them to step up to protect the environment and for our housing. And there's good people there, but they're not moving fast enough, quite frankly. They're some of them have been there too long, and I'm choosing my words carefully now, and I don't want to leave on a negative note, but change is needed, and it starts locally. So please, please, please get involved in those neighborhood board elections. Get involved in local elections, and we'll pivot to our next show. We're going to be talking kind of a recap or report card, or talking about what happened at the what are we going to be talking about in the next show, Aria, and when is that?
The next show is, let's check the date just to confirm. I believe it is May 19th. May 19th.
2 weeks from today.
Now, we have a very special guest, one of our favorite people on the planet, Representative Kim Coco Iwamoto, is going to be joining us. And hopefully she's going to bring some friends who want to share some spill the tea, behind the scenes secrets, some stuff that, doesn't get published on Civil Beat, doesn't get covered on Hawaii News Now, to give us the real story of what happened, what didn't happen, what could have happened.
Yeah, Kim Coco Iwamoto is, those of you that have worked with her or watched her know she's totally awesome. And the legislative environment, and I spent 8 years in the state Senate, serving in another 10 years or so as an advocate. It is fear-based in much of its decision-making. People are afraid they're going to lose the next election. They're afraid they're not going to be on the committee. They're afraid of lots of stuff. Good people, lots of them, but they're just timid. And I'll tell you, Kim Coco Iwamoto is not afraid of anything. And she's willing to speak truth to power, and not foolishly, not, just for the sake of making headlines, but thoughtfully and responsibly. And so she's going to be our special guest. We're going to have a heart-to-heart conversation about the state legislature. And shows after that, what I'd like to see us is pivot toward 2026. We need to find candidates. Again, this is just individuals talking. This is no organization. We need to identify our friends who share our values, who aren't scared of their own shadow, and want to make a difference and feel the same urgency that we feel. The seas are rising, the planet is burning, there are people living in the bushes and dying. We need representatives and senators and council members who feel that urgency. So
I've seen a lot of feedback on news articles about the state legislature, what happened, what didn't happen, and people are upset. This representative didn't vote for this. This state senator didn't vote for that, and they're all saying, vote them out, vote them out. Remember in November. First of all, you need to remember in August, because that's when most of the elections are decided. Like it or not, it's either a competitive Democratic primary, or there's no contender at all because no one bothered to run against them. And that is an issue. You cannot vote someone out if there is no other choice. You have to have another choice. So there's going to be, hopefully going to be many more elections that regular people can help. And we will share, like, how can someone from Oahu help support a representative candidate in Maui? There's lots of options. You don't have to be physically there to help support candidates. And we'll share some of those tips.
And I'll give Civil Beat a shout out also. For those of you who do not read Civil Beat on a regular basis, I encourage you to read it. Click on it. It's online. It's got the Sunshine blog. Is a good piece. You have to read through it because it has bits and pieces, but read Civil Beat. And I would also be remiss if I didn't ask people to sign up for my own email action letter. You can go to garyhooser.com. garyhooser.com. You'll see a subscribe button at the bottom of the page. Subscribe, and I send something out maybe once a week, and I get good feedback on it, and so I love doing it. So please sign up for that. Go on our Facebook, Policy and Politics, and like it and follow us if you could. And we'd love to hear your suggestions on what future shows you might want to see. And please tell your friends.
And yes, we are ironing out the technical difficulties. Thank you so much for everyone that stuck through it with us. We're also working on how to get the audio feed to be a podcast so people can listen, as opposed to have to watch on YouTube. Hopefully we'll be able to get permissions with Meta soon so we can stream directly to Facebook as well as continue on YouTube. All of these things that just take a little bit of fine tuning. So I really appreciate everyone's patience. Any suggestions and comments as well? We have an email address, policyandpoliticshi@gmail.com. You can send in any comments or questions there as well.
That's politics, AND policy. Oh, policy and politics.
AND politics.
AND
HI.
HI. Okay. Yeah, and just a reminder again, we're all volunteers. We're happy to be volunteers, but we're doing this juggling other responsibilities as well, and happy to do it. But it's not technologically perfect yet, but we're working on it. So we got a few more minutes. It's got to be something that we're going to get off at 6:30 and think, oh, we should have said this and we should have said that. Mishka, do you have some final comments or questions that you wanted to raise? I don't know.
There is some fodder.
Oh, that must be pretty.
Go ahead.
You must be out of ideas.
No. You mentioned before that sometimes you had questions, and so I figured I'd call you up to help us close it out.
No, I think what you guys have got going here is awesome, and the just like answering that need that people have right now for a localized kind of political talk show, right? Like talk me through it. How do I get through this week? This administration, this legislative session. Like, it just helps us all digest and understand and then focus. So thank you both for making it happen and bringing some great guests who are super knowledgeable and involved intimately in everything that's happening. So it makes us feel we're more connected and we have a voice. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mishka. Appreciate it. Whoa, so
there is a little bit of chatter going back and forth about the Democratic Party. Is it better to get involved and take over the party, or should people be organized and start a new party? The Green Party. Why are more people not participating in the Green Party? What's going on there? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a subject for a whole show, quite frankly. The way that our ballot is set up penalizes everybody but Democrats and Republicans. I mean, the way I know good Green Party people, but if they run in a primary, that means I would have to pull a Green Party ballot, which means I couldn't vote for Kim Koko Iwamoto, who's running as a Democrat. So it prevents you from supporting everybody else. And so that's kind of a flaw or a fundamental challenge. But it's an important conversation. The Democratic Party has let us down. I have to say recently, I've been pleased with some of the statements coming out of our party chair, calling out the actions of Congresswoman Ed Case, not directly, not by name like I just did, but by topic and by subject matter. But they need to do more. There's a line there between controlling the legislators and having the party dictate to them how they're supposed to act, and calling them out when they don't follow the party platform. The party platform, I encourage people to go on the Democratic Party and read the platform. It's good. It talks about healthcare and fair wages and the environment, and it's a good party platform. But there are just way too many people at the state legislative level in Hawaii who don't follow that platform. And so I think we need to hold them accountable. And whether or not that means a new party or rebuilding the existing party, it means getting involved. As you know, Aria, it's a lot of work. You got to show up at meetings. You got to do things. You got to join committees, and most people aren't willing to do that, unfortunately. Whether it's they got too many other things, too many bills to pay, or too many kids to watch, or too whatever. But all of us collectively need to get off of the soapbox or off the couch and join those committees that are boring and be part of it. And that's when things will change, when people get involved. I have to say, before we close out, your emails and your calls make a difference. Don't ever think, well, just because nobody's listening to me, the guy doesn't like me, why should I even bother sending an email? Send the darn email. Make the call, leave a voicemail. Show up. Everybody in the room matters. So that's my lecture, a closing lecture. We all need to be thankful for where we live, thankful for what we have, for our beautiful families and beautiful surroundings, and be strong in protecting that for everybody.
Thank you so much. We'll see everyone in 2 weeks, May 19th, with our special guest, Representative Kimkoko Iwamoto. And
Okay.
have a good night.
Thank you, Aria. Thank you. Aloha, everybody. Mishka. We'll see you all in 2 weeks.